Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today at Western Sydney University New Colombo Plan Scholarship Program Information Webinar. My name is Juliet. I'm the International Mobility Coordinator at Western Sydney University. Today we'll be joined by two of our wonderful NCP scholars, Justin and Jane. So quickly go through the format of this webinar today. So this webinar will be recorded. I'll first pretty much go through what is NCP program. And because today our focus will be talking about the scholarship program, so I'll go through with you in terms of the eligibility, what are the locations that you can do your NCP scholarship program, as well as some tips on how to address the selection criteria. And of course, then we'll invite our wonderful NCP scholars to share the experience, and they will have some tips to share with you. Okay, let's start it. So the New Colombo Plan is actually a signature initiative of the Australian government. The idea is actually to increase the knowledge of young Australians, to support them, to allow them to study and undertake an internship program in the region. So the NCP program, I'm sure some of you actually heard about it all the time, but the NCP program actually has two components. The first one is the flexible mobility grants program that your school will put in like a proposal to out to the international office, and then we pass it on to DFAT, and then they will decide which funding, which project that they will fund, and that's why sometimes you hear the New Colombo Plan mobility grants. Well, but today we're going to focus on the New Colombo Plan scholarship program, and it is the most prestigious scholarship program ever. And I will tell you why. Because the New Colombo Plan scholarship program actually pays for a lot of your expense, including your tuition fee if you decided that you want to go to study at a university that is not an exchange partner with Western Sydney University. Also pay for your monthly allowance that will cover your living expense. You also pay for your language component if you decided you want to do some language studies during the program, in addition to the relocation cost and your flights there. Okay, so here you can see actually, you can also see a photo of Justin and Jane here. So far, Western Sydney University, we have successfully secured 12 NCP scholarships before, and here is a list of students previously received these prestigious scholarships. Okay, so what is the NCP scholarships? It is definitely the most prestigious transformative program ever. With this program, you actually have the ultimate flexibility in, design the dream, overseas program that you want to. So you can, for example, let's say you want to pick to study a semester or two in India, and then if you decided you want to do a language program before the program starts, and then you can also do another internship program. And then it doesn't mean that if your host, let's say if you pick India as your host location for your study component, doesn't mean that you need to pick India as the location to do your internship. So currently there are 40 host locations available for you to choose from across the Indo-Pacific region. So in 2019, the government have assigned 120 scholarships. So it is very competitive because each of the Australian university can only nominate 10 of their best students to DFAT. And then they would then interview the students and pick 120 and give them this prestigious scholarship. Okay, so here is actually a list of host location. Now you will see that not all of them Western Sydney University have an exchange agreement with. So currently we do have exchange agreements. So we do have partner university in Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, China. But of course, we don't have partners in Bangladesh, Japan. But don't worry, what happens is you will just need to do your research to identify which overseas institution offer an interesting program available in English that could match up with your degree requirements. So there are some extensive research that you need to do, and what I will do is I will get Justin and Jane to share some of the tips. Actually, at the moment, Jane or Justin, do you have some comments to add, like how do you go about searching the host university, because there are a lot of options available, I understand.
Well, yeah, there's tons of options. I guess start by figuring out what kind of electives you've got. My degree is pretty inflexible, which made it pretty hard from the get-go. So if you're doing a degree that's got some elective spaces, it makes it much easier to find a university that's going to match up. And if not, then to give you guys an idea, I spent probably the equivalent of 1 unit's worth of study doing my research for my application. It was about the time it took to put together my application. So it's really, really intensive if it's hard.
Definitely. And Justin, do you have something to add?
I guess probably just repeating Jane's emphasis there. A lot of preparation work. So looking at the forms you need to do and who you need to speak to within the university, like at both at the university who will be hosting you overseas, but also who you need to speak to maybe within your department at Western Sydney University, and just starting to make a connection with those people. It doesn't have to be offer me a place right now, or hey, I'm going to go overseas next year to the person at Western Sydney, but just put some feelers out and say hi, introduce yourself. Those kinds of things can go a long way, because there is a bit of relationship management. It's not just a bureaucratic put in the form and X, Y, Z. There's also a bit of hey, I need this, I need that, and that really is smoother when you've got you've broken the ice with them already.
Yeah, definitely. Because I know a lot of time, maybe your academics will have some contacts over there, so they might actually have some, university that they will be able to recommend to you. And obviously, at this stage, it's still very early, so really you just need to have a basic kind of like plan. You don't really have a concrete plan. Okay, I must study at this university and this host country, because sometimes plans change. So definitely it does require you to be resilient and be flexible. Okay, so moving on. Okay, am I eligible to apply for the NCP scholarship? So first of all, in order to apply, you first need to be nominated by Western Sydney University, and later on, I will pretty much go through the timeline with you. So you'll be able to know what you need to do. So first, you need to be nominated by Western Sydney University. You need to be an Australian citizen. So obviously, you cannot take your program in a host location that you currently hold dual citizenship, or you previously was a permanent resident there. So, for example, if if I was a Chinese citizen and I can't say that, oh, I want to pick China as my host destination, because it completely defeats the purpose of, lift up your Indo-Pacific, the knowledge of your Indo-Pacific region, because you need to experience a new culture and explore a culture that you haven't experienced before. Okay, so you also need to be enrolled in the units at Western Sydney University during the application process. So you definitely need to be an Western Sydney University students and have completed at least 60 Western Sydney University credit points by the end of 2018 academic year. So some of you might have some questions like, oh, I'm actually a part-time student, I'm only doing 2 units per semester. Does it mean that I'm not eligible? So you can still be eligible so long as you still enroll units at Western Sydney University and will have completed at least 60 Western Sydney University credit points by the end of 2018 academic year. There is an age limit, so you need to be between 18 to 28 years old, before the 1st of January 2019. Yeah, so if you will turn to 29 after 1st of January 2019, then you will be eligible. Yeah, definitely be undertaking a bachelor degree or bachelor honor degree when the scholarship program commences. It does have a GPA requirements, and this is very important. So the government require that you have a 70% grade average. So if we convert it back to Western Sydney University GPA, because our GPA is at a 7-point scale, then you need to have a GPA 5.5. Yep, at the time of the application, and obviously not be a previous recipients of a new Colombo Point scholarship. So Jane and Justin, you won't be able to apply again. Yep, okay. So next, to go through the selection criteria, you will see 40% of them, the weighting actually really focus on academic excellence at the tertiary level, which means that your results at high school doesn't count. So you shouldn't waste any words limit by mention how the achievement you got from high school. So you definitely need to highlight your academic excellence at the tertiary level. Leadership in the community, so think about any active commitments that you've done for the community. It can be within Western Sydney University or in your local community, or any volunteering work you've done for the community. Yeah, and also adaptability and resilience. This is also very important. And for the next slides, I'm going to give you some tips on how to write them, because mainly the governments or the FED really want to see how flexible you are and how resilient you are towards change, because you are going to study intern in a foreign environment, so they really want to see how you can adapt to this new environment, and if things happen, you do have strategies and the flexibility to deal with difficult situations. And final point, ability to contribute to the new Colombo plan goals. And I know a lot of students find it difficult to address this. Being in the interview panel for Western Sydney University, our internal one, I do find students having trouble addressing particularly the ability to contribute to new Colombo plan goals. Okay, so some tips, criterion. A lot of time when you think about academic excellence, most of the students will just say, oh, I have a GPA 6.5 out of 7. But that's not good enough, because think about it, all the students, in order to be eligible to apply for this NCP scholarship program, that's the requirement they need to reach 70% of 100. So you, instead of addressing that you achieve what grade, you should actually highlight your communication skills. If you in addition, you need to go beyond talking about your university results. So, for example, give some example. If you previously publish any journals, or if you work on a specific academic project with your tutor or other classmates, then maybe you can mention that. And of course, I will also get Justin and Jane to talk about what they do, if they have some tips to give to the students. Criteria 3 is also very important, is in regards to resilience and adaptability. So make sure you do provide some concrete examples. What does it mean to deal with change? And some of you might not have studied overseas or travel overseas before, but it doesn't matter. You can even give example or any challenges that you face in Australia. So think about any difficult situation that you have experienced before. Give concrete example, what kind of strategies and steps you've taken in order to overcome that. Yeah. And criteria 4, I know it's difficult, is actually mention how you can contribute to the NCP goals over time. And in the past, a lot of students mentioned is like in their application, and when addressing this selection criterion, they tend to mention to demonstrate their understanding of the NCP goals and how it could benefit themselves as an individual. But the NCP secretary and the selection, the panelists will actually want to see how the applicants will contribute to the NCP goals over time, and also after you return from the program, how can you continue to mold the NCP programs and contribute to the NCP goals. It's not just about individual benefits, but more. You need to talk about the bigger picture. Yeah. Okay, so before I move on, Justin and Jane, do you have anything to add? Hello? Hi, Jane. Can you hear me? Oh, hi, Jane. Yeah.
Justin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I definitely, for that first criterion, I really found the engagement and learning section a good area to really expand on those things beyond university results. So personally, I was involved in the course-related student society. And so I sort of highlighted the ways that I'd shown a real interest in the subject I was studying, like the degree I was doing. So if you have some involvement in whether you've gone to a conference, maybe you organize a social group with your classmates to do more study, anything like that that shows that you're actually really interested and really passionate about what you're studying. Those are the kinds of things that you can emphasize in your academic excellence, because you're demonstrating that you're not just about doing your assessments and sort of plugging away at that. You actually want to go beyond those kind of things to get the most out of your course. So keep an open mind and really think about how you get involved in your degree and how you're passionate about it.
Excellent, thank you, Justin. And Jane?
Well, I guess leading on from what Justin said, that passion that you've got about what you're studying really ties into number 4 as well. Because if you can show that you're really interested in what you're going to do, you can talk quite easily about how you're going to take the experience and take it into your career. By showing that you're passionate about what you're studying, because it's sort of just a linear transition, really. But yeah, I mean, I guess for me, probably 3 and 4 are maybe more important than I guess the first 2. Especially I've found when talking to like the people who do the interviews for the NCP tend to be much more interested in 3 and 4 than that. So really think about how you're going to approach those and how you're going to answer them. And adaptability is really important with the program, because as somebody who's had their program completely collapse underneath them, you need to be able to pick up and keep going with it, because it's a great opportunity and you don't want to get halfway through and say, I can't do this anymore. It's too much.
Exactly, and I totally agree, because the governments and the university, they all put in so much time and energy in terms of selecting the best candidates. So they definitely want to make sure the students that they select to send on the program will, reach like maximum results, and contribute to the program. So imagine if, someone who is not resilient, you select them for the program after 5 days arriving in this new environment. Oh, I can't do this, I want to come back. Okay, so thank you. So now moving on to the next slide. So talking about the key dates. So yeah, like I mentioned before, Australian University can only select 10 of the best and brightest students to DFAT each year. So if you're fortunate enough and we select you and nominate you to DFAT, make sure you do take your time to complete your application, because it is a very prestigious scholarship and it's very it's like a very once in a lifetime opportunity, really. So pretty much at the moment we are opening the expression of interest. So if you're interested in applying for this program, first you need to express your interest to Western Sydney University, our Global and Study Abroad team. We have kind of mimicked the selection criteria DFAT hope to see in the application. So you will see that when you fill out the expression of interest form, we actually ask you about your GPA. We ask you to address the 4 selection criteria. So make sure you do take time to to address those selection criteria, because based on the response we receive, then we will actually handpick some students. So the shortlisted applicants would then invited to have an interview with our team, and after the interview, we'll then pick the best 10 to nominate to the event. Okay. So definitely, don't just like one sentence saying, "Oh, I have a GPA of 7," and that's your, to address the first selection criteria. Okay, so after that, like I mentioned, we'll go through the internal selection and ranking, and then we'll nominate you to DFAT in July. You would then receive specific application instructions from DFAT, and you're then required to complete your application before 30th of August. And then they will pretty much go through all the application and select and pretty much shortlist the best candidates. If you're successful, you'll be notified, and you will then be invited to attend an interview in Canberra. And I know Jane and Justin can also tell you it's quite intensive, the entire selection process. Yeah, so, and of course, they will pay for your expense for you to travel to Canberra and accommodation as well. And in November, then you'll be notified of the outcome, and the successful, candidates would then leave for the scholarship program in the year of 2019. Okay. So yeah, so I've got like a short video of our 2016 NCP's scholar Kayla Alderson. So let's see if this video works. Just 1 second. Okay, doesn't seem.
Hi, my name is Kayla Alderson, and I'm a current Western Sydney University student. Hi,
Can you hear?
My name is Kayla Alderson, and I'm a current. Please last. Hi, my name is Kayla Alderson, and I'm a current Western Sydney University student studying a Bachelor of Criminology. I had the privilege last year to be a New Colombo Plan Scholar, and I highly encourage you to get involved as well. The New Colombo Plan is an Australian initiative to support students in study and across many internships and mentorships. Now, the primary aim of NCP is to build long-lasting relationships both institutionally and people to people. I got involved with the NCP program because I knew how much it would benefit my career development. For me, it had a big personal push in terms of my self-confidence and independence, which I found on my New Colombo program. I spent one academic semester in Hong Kong, followed by 2.5 months in Jakarta, undertaking an internship with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. This program has been so beneficial for me in terms of opening up so many doors for my career. I find that I'm now more marketable to employees, which is something that I really wanted to do to be a standout graduate when I finished my degree.
Okay, so now let's just go back to the presentation. Okay, so now it's actually questions time for Jane and Justin. So first of all, like Jane and Justin, can you tell us what made you first think of like becoming an NCP scholar? Maybe Jane, do you want to start first? Yeah.
Well, I actually started off not knowing very much about the program, to be completely honest. I got the invitation email from Western Sydney, and kind of went, yeah, I'd love to study overseas and have someone else pay for it, because I am a broke student who works all the time to pay rent. So for me, that was sort of just, I just wanted to go overseas. I wanted to study overseas. And then as I sort of progressed through the application, I realized how much this program would actually mean to me and to my career in the future. And I mean, I'm still going, really. I'm halfway through my program. So I'll let you know where I get in the end.
Nice, excellent. And what about you, Justin?
Yeah, likewise. I didn't know a lot about the New Colombo Plan scholarship program until I got the email from the university. But it was the case that actually I was already interested in studying overseas, but looking at postgraduate options to study in South Korea, which is where I did my program in the end. So it was kind of after, I guess, to give context, I live in Eastwood where there's a big Korean community. I had lots of Korean friends who had migrated from there. And my partner, my wife, is South Korean. So those kind of things contributed to an interest in the culture and a desire to go over and spend some time in the country. So as I say, looking at postgrad options, but then when I got the notification that I could do it during undergrad, I thought this is such a fantastic opportunity. It's a prestigious scholarship and there's so much that comes along with it, the language study, the internships, etc. I just thought, oh, why not? I'll give it a crack. And I tell you, yeah, it was worth it.
Excellent, of course. And what are some barriers? Because, you know, we all talk about, you know, how prestigious it is, it's super competitive. So what are the barriers that you face at, you know, various stage of the process?
Well, there's a couple. I'm doing, just so you all understand, I'm doing a Bachelor of Law and a Bachelor of Criminology. And I'm in Japan is my host location. There's not a lot of Japanese universities that offer law in English because it's mostly a postgraduate option. They do sort of a similar legal system to what America does, where you do your undergrad and it's kind of in whatever you want, and then you do a Juris Doctor. So that's made it quite difficult for me to find university options. So that was a big hurdle that I had to get across in my application. And then a big hurdle that I had to get across in my actual scholarship program, because my university that I was studying at decided to discontinue my units. So I'm now applying for another university. So it's sort of an ongoing sort of thing where you need to sort of keep on your toes. But research is the big barrier, is doing your research properly.
Definitely, definitely. And what about you, Justin?
Yeah, likewise. I think it's definitely challenging to find units, the right units at the right university. Perhaps similar to Jane in a way. I'm studying studied a Bachelor of Social Work honours, which doesn't allow any electives. So it was a case of, and it was my final year as well. So whatever I had in that semester or that year, I had to find exactly that at universities in Korea, or just about. So the challenge there was a bit of two things. One, it was doing the research and finding, equivalent units, but it was also making sure that the units that I was trying to get across, because none of them were perfect fits by any stretch. It was about trying to build a good relationship with the academic staff at Western Sydney Uni, and try to, I guess, hear what their thoughts are, because they run the units, they're the ones who approve it, and they have to think about the graduates they're sending out at the end. But then also put my case forward for saying, well, this is why I think these units are a good fit and why they should go ahead. So I guess you've got to have you've got to do your homework, and you've got to try and find things that match well in that case. But you've also got to prosecute your case and say, well, this is why I think these kind of things are useful, and why I think you should sign off on these units as being appropriate for my degree.
Yeah, 100%. I would definitely say, finding a university that can offer the units, in English in your area that could match up with your remaining units is definitely the most challenging part. And, all the overseas program, you just need to be flexible and be resilient. If your study plan fell through, then what kind of action you need to take to overcome this. Yeah, so definitely to build a good relationship with your academic advisor and director of academic program is very important. And obviously, NCP is well known enough that if you are lucky to in actually receiving this prestigious scholarship, most likely your academic advisor will more than happy to assist you and try to be flexible when they can.
Absolutely.
To provide you with assistance. Let's talk about the highlights of your time as an NCP scholar. So you both met Julia Bishop.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about the biggest highlight of your time.
Well, if we're talking about politicians, then I've met Turnbull. We had a lunch in Tokyo with Martin Turnbull.
Wow.
But to be honest, it's the travel. You don't realise just how much money they're actually giving you, because the Indo-Pacific region actually has a much lower cost of living. So I have spent so much time traveling, and it's just an amazing opportunity to get in touch with the culture around you that you don't really get the time to do in Australia in the same way. So I guess probably my biggest highlight so far has been I've climbed Mount Fuji and can tick that off my bucket list.
Oh, nice. And the people that you met as well, and the connections you managed to.
Yeah.
Excellent. And what about you, Justin?
Yes, I started my program in February of last year and just got back sort of end of March. And yeah, obviously the travel is pretty great. Seeing, 4 seasons through South Korea, like they have real winters and real autumns. That was pretty amazing. I mean, yeah, it's hard to pick a single thing, because I would highly recommend, where possible, do a year plan. Don't go for 6 months. Do the full year if you can do it. Make that your plan, because there's nothing like spending a full year in a country you've never been to before, or maybe you have been to before. But just the depth of experience you'll get, the people you meet, the culture, the food. It's just life changing, really. So. That's kind of a cop out. I didn't really pick a highlight, but it was all great.
Too many highlights. And how has being an NCP scholar changed you, and how have you made meaningful changes?
the way I can write emails diplomatically
Yeah.
improved beyond sight because you cold call so many people trying to do internships. It's not even funny. So you have got this super structured email that just goes out. But I'm also, I mean, I was pretty independent before I left, but to be honest, they're living in a country, I don't speak Japanese very well, I'll be quite honest. It's just an amazing experience, and you learn to stand on your own 2 feet so quickly, and you just appreciate everything around you so much more. Then you just can do everything. Like you could just pick up and do anything.
Definitely the confidence that you have grown because you the experiences and you learn. That's excellent. Well, what about you, Justin?
I guess to pick one aspect, I did do some Korean study before going over to Korea. So things like learning their alphabet, and I had some basic skills in, say, like ordering food, giving directions, all those kinds of things. And while my final year was pretty tough doing it over there because I was writing my honours thesis, etc., and that kind of had to take priority, it was still a great chance to improve language skills. So by doing like a full-time study for about 10 weeks in Korean, my language skills have improved a lot, and obviously I got to practice more with locals. So building on that, I'm still continuing Korean study, and we'll go back over to Korea actually later this year to do some more. And I think definitely if that's something you're interested in, which, I mean, this is a great avenue to improve your language skills. So I would say start, if you're really interested in the place you want to go to, then yeah, start doing some study as soon as you can, and really take the opportunity to build it over there.
Yeah, excellent. And what would be your top 3 tips for Western Sydney University students thinking to apply for the SCP scholarship program?
3 is kind of hard. I know what my top 1 is.
Yeah.
Find what you're passionate about. Like really do some self-reflection and find what you're passionate about, how it relates to your study, and how it relates to the country you want to go to. Because if you can talk passionately about something, you'll breeze through the interview. Like the application will write itself and you will breeze through the interview. So yeah, just spend a lot of time figuring out, you know, what really excites you or upsets you, and how does that relate to what you're studying, and how does that relate to where you're going.
That's very good tips. And like, Jane mentioned, when it's definitely, if you're passionate about something, then you can actually talk about it over again, and, the interviewers can definitely feel the passions. Yeah, 100%. And what about you, Justin?
Yeah, likewise. That's probably the one thing I really wanted to participate in this webinar to say was to emphasize that point about your passion, because it gets very easy. I think you can get a lot of clues from when you understand what the aims of the New Colombo Plan program are about, the questions you'll hear and all the other things, the criteria. You get a clearer idea, or some clues at least, about what the interviewers want to hear and what the assessing team wants to hear. But at the end of the day, you've got to balance that with what are you passionate about? What do you want to bring to the table? If you worry too much about, or who's, do they have quotas for different courses, or do they really want this, or do they want that? It actually can put you off a bit sometimes, and it can kind of get away from, well, what are you really excited about? What are you going to use this opportunity for? So make sure you balance it with what you're passionate about. And also, I guess on that, at this particular stage, maybe some of you are, very early in the applications, and November can be far enough away when you've got, quite a few hoops to jump through, quite a few applications to write, etc. So I think probably the best thing for your application will be, really, if you are passionate about going to the country or the countries you've got planned, if you're passionate about the languages, the culture, that area of study, also remember that there's a lot of other avenues outside of the New Colombo plan. And I'm not saying that to discourage you from applying. I'm saying that if you really look outside and see how many opportunities there are to go, there's so many different kinds of scholarships. There's so many different ways to go and experience those countries. Actually, what you'll find is that you start to build on that excitement that got you to apply in the first place. And so it makes the wait a bit easier, because you know that if it doesn't come off for you, there are other options. And when you do go into your interviews, you can show that you've really researched your countries, you've researched all the ways to get there. And again, it sort of emphasizes that passion you've got, because it means whether I get this New Colombo plan scholarship or not, I'm going to Japan, I'm going to Papua New Guinea, I'm going wherever I'm going to go. So look outside the New Colombo plan as well, and really get excited about your country. Don't get excited about the scholarship too much. It's too painful.
And that's actually a very good suggestion, because we all know that this NCP scholarship program is super competitive. If it happens you don't get it, doesn't mean that you can't go. There's still plenty of opportunities available. You can actually go through Western Sydney University, exchange partner, where we have the exchange partnerships, where you can still enroll at Western Sydney University. You don't need to pay the tuition fee. Over there, there's the OS Help loan available, can help and support your studies. And we also have mobility grants available for students who decide to go on a short-term program or a semester or year-long exchange program. Definitely, the world is your canvas. There's actually so many opportunities available at the moment. But definitely, put in an application for the NCP scholarship program. And we actually have a questions for Jane. So one of the attendees actually typed in these questions. I'm studying law, planning, and interested in going to Japan as well. Which university offers law in English?
Okay. Well, I'm in Tokyo. It makes things a bit easier. I can't tell you very much about Osaka or Kyoto or Sapporo. But for Tokyo, I'm currently applying to, and you're just going to look at me, Hitotsubashi University is in Tokyo. It's actually quite close to the Imperial Garden, so that's pretty cool. They do a fall program that just runs for 4 months from September to December, but it's a really good program. Keio University has a law school, and they offer units in English. The difficulty with both of them is they are law schools, so they consider themselves to be postgraduate. So you might need to wrap your head around the idea that you might need to argue with these people a little bit to say, I am doing the level of law that you're teaching, and I want to be considered for your program, because they might look at Bachelor of Law and go, there's not always an understanding that it's more or less equivalent. And Western Sydney's just opened up a partnership with Chuo University, which is a little bit outside of Tokyo. They have law in English as well, and that's a really good option if you wanted to do exchange rather than non-exchange. And then in the broader areas, I would start by searching for law schools, because a lot of the time they'll have exchange opportunities, and those exchange opportunities will teach law in English. But that's the 3 that I know off the top of my head.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jane. And to be honest, in terms of host university, options and preferences, I just want to give you some feedback, because there are some locations are extremely popular, which means that it's also very competitive. So you will probably competing with 50 students for like 3 spots available. So the most popular locations are Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, China. And do you have anything to add to that, Jane and Justin, in terms of some tips in picking to increase the chance of being considered for the NCP scholarship?
Honestly, don't let it put you off. If you want to go to those countries, go to those countries, because you will do yourself a disservice by choosing another country that you're less passionate about. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there's only 15 spots for each country. But at the end of the day, you're only competing against those people who've applied for your country. Really, that is the end of the story. And you just have to be the best 15. So
yeah, yeah, I agree with Jamie as well. You want to put in an application and pick the host university, host location that you're truly passionate about. If you put a fake application, they can sense that you actually can't talk about it, really. Okay, and what about you, Justin? Do you have some tips?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Yep. Your plan has to make sense, and you've got to be passionate about it. So go with the country that you think is going to be best.
Excellent, thank you. So now we'll open up for questions. Do you guys have any questions for Jane or myself? Let me move on to the next slide. In the meantime, so definitely, if you want to read more information about the New Colombo Plan Scholarship Program, you can actually go to the DFAT websites. They have really detailed instructions and tips about this scholarship program, and also on Western Sydney University Global website, we also list out the timeline, including the expression of interest form for you to fill out. So the deadline to put in your expression of interest for us to consider to nominate you to DFAT is actually 22nd of June. There is a lot of time that you need to put in to research and think about how you want to write your application. So you might want to start doing some research now. Okay. So yeah, finally, I think there's some questions. Okay, looks like everyone is happy with this webinar. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of the webinar, and thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much, Jane and Justin, to actually taking the time to providing these amazing tips and share your experience with the students.
Yeah, no worries. And if anyone has any questions, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help out, because we only had one student last year, and that's really not good enough.
Oh, I know. We really hope that you all put in an application, and and that's the thing. If you put in an application and your application gets shortlisted, don't just disappear and not put in an application to DFAT, because unfortunately last year we have some late dropouts, so that also contribute to the number. But definitely just put in, give your best and write the best application you can. Obviously, if you're shortlisted, then we'll help you, in terms of preparing the interviews and your written application as well. Okay, so there's a question, does the application get saved so you can come back to? No, unfortunately, we use this form that won't allow you to save your application. So what you want to do is actually, before putting in your application, you want to already write or type in your response into a Word document to address those selection criteria, and then you can just copy and paste when you put in your application. And of course, if you just want to have a look at the application form and then come back later, you can as well. But basically, the expression of interest form will just ask you for your details, your personal details, your study details. For example, how many units you have completed, how many units you've left to complete in your degree, what's your current GPA, and also your written response to address those 4 selection criteria. Okay, I think that's pretty much all for the questions. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us again. I will end this webinar now. As Justin and Jane mentioned earlier, definitely put in your application, and if you have any questions, you can also get in touch with them. They'll be happy to share some tips with you. Okay, thank you so much. I will end the webinar now. Bye.
Bye.